Hi everyone, welcome to Spring Chicken Mosaics, because I think everyone should always feel like a spring chicken. My name is Andrea, and the name of my business is Mosaics by Andrea Edmondson .art. This is a series of 3 videos about creating mosaics. Each one is progressively more challenging, and each one requires a slightly higher cost in materials, $10, $20, and $30. What I recommend is that you take these in order so that you learn the terminology, but you don't have to. So why did we create these videos? Well, one was to stimulate your creativity. When your mind and your hands are active and learning, then you are healthier. The other is we want people to have a way to express themselves, and visual art is a great way to do that. You may see something beautiful, you may see something very frustrating, and you can express it through visual art. And then lastly, we just want to provide some entertainment. Whether it's just for you and your friends, or if you learn this really well, maybe you can teach your friends how to do mosaics. So how this works. As I said, it's a series of 3 videos. And the nice thing about this is there is no note-taking, because with each one of the videos, there is a handout that will reinforce what's said in the videos, okay? Also, there are no specialized tools. You will have to spend a little bit of money on materials, but almost everything is very easily found and you don't have to spend a lot. The videos are each self-paced. So what will happen is I will show you how to do something and tell you about it, and then you will pause the video and do it yourself. And you'll know when it's time to pause because I will put up a pause sign. And you will just pause the video and do what you need to do and then come back and start over again. All right, so what is a mosaic? That is our primary thing to learn in this. Oh, and before I go on, I wanted to show you in the screen next to me is a video of my hands. I'd like to introduce my hands. And in every one of the mosaic videos, I'm going to have you have at least a minimum of these materials. What I recommend is that you have a rag or paper towels for cleaning up any messes, that you have some clean water for cleaning paintbrushes, adding water to grout, other things like that. You will have a small paintbrush that is used to apply adhesive, and probably another one maybe for paint. And in each one, you will have an adhesive, a glue. And that will change depending on the video. And then last but not least, every time you do one of these videos, you should probably have some Band-Aids around just in case, okay? All right, so what I wanted to just cover quickly is what is a mosaic. A mosaic consists of 3 components: a substrate, an adhesive, and tesserae. 3 big words. Substrate. Anything that you put your mosaic on is the substrate, whether it's a glass vase or a flower pot. Those are substrates. Could be your garden wall. Adhesive is the glue you use to stick pretty things on with. It could be a regular glue, it could be a real sticky glue or waterproof glue. Doesn't matter. They're all adhesive. And then lastly, you are going to place tesserae on your mosaic substrate with adhesive. And we use the word tesserae because it encompasses all the types of really pretty materials that you're going to want to put in your mosaic. Look behind me. I have mosaics with jewelry in them, polished stones, tiles, glass, etc. All of it is tesserae. That's not always easy to remember, so here's my analogy. It's like a pizza. Your substrate is like the pizza crust. Your adhesive is like the sauce or cheese, or both of those together, nice and sticky. And then your tesserae, represented by the toppings. So those are the 3 major components in your mosaics, and we will have those in each of these videos. And what else do I need you to do? Okay, so what you're going to do is before each video, I want you to review the handout, see what kind of materials you need. I suggest that you watch the video from beginning to end and then go back and start over again so you know what to expect. You can gather up all your supplies and materials so that you can set up your workspace with at least these basics, and then we will go from there. Okay, so time for you to pause and move on to the next section. Hi, so let's get started with Spring Chicken Mosaics number 2. This is an easy mosaic project, two-dimensional. First, we're going to go over what you are needing in your workspace. In addition to the usual materials, the cloth or paper towels, some clean water, something to clean your paintbrush with, and as I said before, maybe Band-Aids. So for this video mosaic lesson, what you're going to need is a substrate that's flat and made of wood. You can get anything that you want. I got this one at Michael's. I like it because it's inset and it's got these beveled edges. So I like the way that looks, so I'm going to use that. But you can use any of the shapes that they have that are wood. The other thing that you're going to need is a primer because you want to paint that substrate so that adhesives will stick better. And you would just need a regular old paintbrush and a primer paint. I use Kills. Yes, it's a very big container. You don't need to get one that big. But you just need a really good quality primer paint that's going to seal the mosaic substrate, and you want to paint it on all the sides, the bottom, and the top because everything needs to be sealed. You are going to need Weld Bond adhesive. It's a white glue, better quality than the Elmer's glue. Sometimes you'll see it in another container like this, but it's the same glue, same brand. And what else? You will need sanded grout. The grout that I get from the craft stores is small, and this one's by Mosaic Mercantile, and it's a powdered grout. This one's sanded. You can't get it in pre-mix as a sanded grout. You can also buy sanded grout at any hardware store. You know, for small projects and to start out, I recommend that you get this. But if you're going to do this on a regular basis, then just go to your regular hardware store and get a bigger bag because it's way more cost effective. I would recommend having palette knives. As you can see over here on my workspace, I've got 2 of them. I like the short stumpy one for pushing grout into the mosaic. And also this one is just nice for clearing off the edges, etc. But if you don't have those, you can also just use a plain old plastic knife. No big deal. And I also recommend having let me get these out of the way, bent nose tweezers. Because when you're picking up tesserae, it's nice to be able to pick things up with these tweezers. For example, if you have shaky hands and you need to move a piece, you can move it easily with the tweezers. When you mix the powdered grout, you will need a simple plastic throwaway container. This is my yogurt cup and a popsicle stick. All disposable because you will throw those away when they're done. And then lastly, 2 safety things. It helps to have a rubber or a plastic glove when you mix grout. You don't really want to get that on your hands. It's got chemicals in it that cause like a slight burn. And you do not want to breathe the dust unless you want COPD. So we're all familiar with the famous masks. And you just wear this when the mosaic grout is dry until it becomes wet and there's no dust in the air anymore. But you should wear it when it's being poured and stirred, okay? And then lastly, you need your tesserae. And in this particular section of these videos, I am going to be using a kind of a beach glass type tesserae that I got at a hobby store. It's nice and flat. I got a couple different colors, and it's going to work really well on my mosaic. So again, what I'm going to say is I'm pausing. Go get your workspace ready and all your materials, and we will go from there, okay? So in this section, I just want to talk to you quickly how to prepare your substrate and your tesserae. We already mentioned that a substrate needs to be primed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and take my primer paint, which I have put into a smaller, more manageable container than that half-gallon paint can. And really, you just want to have a nice solid coat of paint on every surface. What the primer does is several things. One, it helps create a barrier between the wood and the tesserae, which makes the glue stick better. Also, the primer has a little bit of waterproofing in it. So your mosaic, if it ever gets wet, it's just a little bit more protected. Wood shouldn't get wet, but this does help. And then another reason is because when you apply tesserae, especially if it has any kind of transparency to it, you want the background to be white so that you're seeing the true colors of the tesserae. And as you can see, I'm trying to get into all of these cracks, getting there. And then lastly, it's an aesthetic thing. You know, you're going to have a substrate that's painted and you're not going to see this part that's going to be underneath the tesserae, but you're going to see the edges and the frame. And if all of that's primed before you do your mosaic, then if you decide to put another coat of paint on it afterwards for design purposes, you know, another color or something, it's already primed and sealed and ready to go. So I'm going to finish painting this quick and then I'm going to come back to you right away, okay? We'll just pause a second. So I'm back real quick just to show you the progress. I have primed the front, the sides, and the back. You can see a little bit that there's some streaks. So I might do that over again just because this wood really soaked it up. Don't try to paint the front and the back at the same time. Paint one side, let it dry, flip it, and then paint the other side. One thing I wanted to mention too, though, is you might want to wear an apron when you're doing the priming or when you're doing the grouting. Primer really sticks to clothes, doesn't come out. So, and grout's just messy. It's cement product. So anyway, I'm going to paint the second coat on this. I'm lucky I'm in Arizona. Everything dries fast. And then we will come back and talk real quickly about how to get your tesserae ready. Okay, so while the paint is drying on the substrate, I just want to talk to you real quick about preparing your tesserae. As you can see here on my workspace, I've actually color sorted the tesserae. That's what I say, always get your palette set up so it's easy to find what colors or shapes or sizes you want. And actually it's nice to have a bigger tray than this so you can spread your pieces out and really see the sizes. Another thing is you want to make sure that all your pieces are clean because otherwise glue won't stick to them, especially if they're dusty. So these have all been recently wiped. They're not very shiny because it's beach glass and they have some nicks and crannies in them. And just a heads up, you know, if you have nooks and crannies in them, not nicks and crannies, I guess they are nicks, that when you grout, you'll get some grout into those too. It's just inevitable. So don't be OCD about that. Just go with the big picture. Remember, mosaics were not made to be looked at 8 inches away. They were meant to be looked at from a decent distance. So clean up your tesserae and just make sure it's all in order. And we will go get ready to start applying the tesserae to our substrate. Okay? So now that we've finished with the tesserae explanation, I want you to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and have you pause the video while you paint your substrate and get your tesserae ready for the next part. Okay? All right, so you've got your substrate and your tesserae prepared, and this is where we're going to go with this. This is going to be more an abstract type of design, and as you've seen, I have all these different colors of tesserae. And so this is really one of the most relaxing ways to do mosaics, okay, is that you just want to fit your pieces like a jigsaw puzzle into this. Now, the nice thing about this is it already has an edge, so I don't have to worry too much about how close my pieces come to the edge. But if you have a piece, a mosaic that has a flat edge over here, you can either push the tesserae right up to the edge so that when you grout, the grout doesn't get anywhere in between the edge and the piece, or make it look like everything else and have that little bit of a less than 1/4 inch there so that all of the pieces, so that you have grout in there and it'll match the rest of the mosaic. So on this one, I am going to just try to fit pieces together. Now you'll notice too that I have some, let's see, where is it in here? Like some of these pieces are like really big. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure I want that to stand out as much. So, or I could go completely different with the design and say, ooh, look at these big pieces. I'm going to make a statement with those. So I haven't quite decided yet what I'm going to do with them. They're all nice and flat and about the same size, so that's going to make them easy to grout. And one side is shiny, and the other side is rough. And so I'm going to try to make sure I have the same side up on all of them. And in this case, I'm going to do the rough side because it's supposed to be sea glass and we want it to look like that. And I kind of wonder about this, if this glass was painted. Had that happen to me before. I grouted it and the paint came off and I thought it was an antique purple glass. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pause a minute and lay some of this out and then show you where I am and show you how to glue it. Okay, so be right back. So I just wanted to give you a quick peek here while I was rearranging my tesserae. All these are pre-cut. I have no tools to cut them, so it really is a jigsaw puzzle. And it looks a little giraffe-like, which I like. And I just decided to fit the colors together without making any type of pattern because a pattern would just be crazy. And as you can see, all of the orange pieces are just all about, a 1/16 of an inch apart. And what I do is, just like you would do in a jigsaw puzzle, is I'll take a look at a space and I'll say, well, let's see, that's got a flat side there and a flat side there. And will it fit in this place? Well, you know, right now that might kind of fit, but I may not like the way it looks. Okay, so like for example, here's this little blue zone here. It's obviously going to be some sort of triangular piece. So I go and I look in my pile of tesserae and I look for my pieces that I think might fit, and I can set it in and say, no, I don't really like the way that looks. Or I might say, well, it fits a little bit better there. You know, then it gives me an odd space for here. So you're constantly trying out pieces. And believe it or not, this is part of the more meditative, relaxing part of this. Ooh, look, here's a big one that has a little bit more of those angles in that. So you see what I mean is that you just keep building off of, and then I look in my box and I go, oh, well, and then look at this one. He fits kind of there. And the thing is, if he doesn't fit, I flip him over or I turn him sideways and see how I can make it fit. So that's where I am right now. I'm going to keep putting these in and then I'll come back to you. So I'm back, and as you can see, I've got all my pieces laid out. Like I said, I didn't cut anything. I have about this many pieces left in the tesserae, so quite a few if I still, large and small, if I wanted to work some variations. But I've laid them all out so they fit. As you can see, there's no really large spaces between anything. It was nice the tesserae came with, you know, little smaller pieces too, so I could lay them in there. Just a big jigsaw. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Weld-Bond glue or another high quality white glue. And white glue works fine with this because the background's white and it'll dry mostly clear, but even if it doesn't, the white's not going to show up, okay? So I'll put a little bit of glue on my, I think I've told you, you can use like an old cottage cheese lid or something like that. Put some glue on there. You don't want to put too much at a time. It's a little bit expensive and you don't need to have a whole lot right away. And then to keep that glue kind of wet, I usually just put a few drops of water on it with my paintbrush and then mix that in. I don't need it real thin, but I don't need it real thick either. You know, you got to remember all of these pieces are laying down on a flat surface. They're not going anywhere, okay? I see my paintbrush is just a little wet. Poke some water out of that. All right. And then, as I mentioned before, tweezers come in handy, especially these bent nose tweezers. And so what I'll do is I'm going to pick up the pieces, and I'm going to do this with my left hand because I paint with my right hand. And what I always recommend is do things in an order that makes sense, and always pick up the piece the same way so that when you glue it, it goes back in the way you want it. Because believe me, if you drop it or something, you're going to be sitting there working that jigsaw puzzle all over again. So I know it's barely in your screen, but I've got this big corner one down here in the bottom, and I'm just going to pick him up because he's bigger than my tweezers. But I always pick it up the same way. I flip it so I know where the glue goes, And then I just apply a nice, even, not too thick coat of glue on the back of the tesserae. And the reason you want it to be even is so that when you grout, that grout has no opportunity to really get underneath the edges, okay? So I'm just gonna set that back in place. It's nice and flat, and I'm just gonna leave it there. And now I'm gonna do like this other big one here because it's easy peasy. And it'll start setting my frame nice and easy. You'll notice too, like I said, this is sea glass, so there's little gaps, and the grout's gonna eventually get under there. But my grout is white, and so it's still gonna look nice. All right, so I'm putting that piece there. I moved him a little away from the edge because I wanted the grout lines to be over here. But now I'm getting into these small, I can still pick this one up with my finger, just barely. Glue on the back, in he goes. Now at this stage, you can glue all of them and then you need to let them set for about 24 hours. But the thing is if something is out of place, this is the time where you can just take the tweezers or a palette knife or something and just pop it up, wash the glue off, reapply it, and put it back in again, okay? So I'm not gonna have you watch me apply every piece of tesserae, and I will get back to you as soon as these are done. And actually, I think you can probably move forward with yours. So take your time, get everything glued, and we'll come back and talk about next steps. So you can pause, lay out your tesserae, and glue them, and wait at least 24 hours. Okay? Hi again. So let's go ahead and finish this mosaic. We have our substrate with all of our pieces that we glued. You have to do the thwack test. Hit the back, hit it like this, make sure there's no loose pieces before you grout. You know, you don't want the pieces to come loose while you're grouting. If they happen to do that, then what you would need to do is pick the piece up and put a little piece of super glue under it and give it about 10 minutes to dry, and then continue and grout around it until you have to and come back to that piece. But in the meantime, we're going to mix this grout real quick. I'm going to wear a dust mask. I think you'll be able to hear me okay, but you do not want to get this powder in your face. I also recommend you wear a glove because there's chemicals in this, and I'm happen to wear one of these nice blue or purple hospital type gloves, but you can even use a food service glove. The idea is to keep it out of your lungs and off your hands. We bought the powdered group grout in the small container. When you pull it out, it is a powder in a bag like this, and we're going to mix it. You could mix it, I guess, if you're going to mix all of it in the original container, but I don't plan to mix all of it, so I'm going to mix it in my yogurt cup. And you'll see as I pour this that it's kind of dusty. All right, scissors, good, it's open already. All right, so you keep it down low so you get as little dust as possible. This, as I've told you, is a sanded grout. And you can feel the grittiness, you know, even through your gloves and through the plastic. If you kind of do that, you can hear the sand. The reason it's sanded is, well, one of the reasons you grout is to fill in those spaces to protect the substrate underneath. And another reason is just for the looks. And then also the sand provides some support for all of the pieces. So there's multiple reasons for grouting a mosaic. I've got about 2/3 of a cup here. I think that's enough, but you know what? In general, grout's cheap. So I'd rather you mixed a little bit more than too little, because then you have to go back and make some more. All right, now what you do is don't add a lot of water quickly. Just add a little bit and stir it slowly so you don't get this big dust cloud going. There's a couple of crunchy pieces in that mix, and that bothers me a little bit because sometimes that tells me that the grout is a little old, but it's stirring up, so I think we're going to be okay. You ever get it from like the big bags from the hardware store and you open it up and it's just got like a crust on it and it's hard? Just take it back and exchange it because it means that it's gotten moisture in it. And of course, I live in Arizona, so getting moisture into grout doesn't happen too often. All right, so here I am. I've got stirring it up, and you can probably see this just a little bit that I overdid it. So it's always good to make a mistake on a video, right? I am going to put more powder in there because I got this too watery. I should have slowed down a little bit, but hey, by making a mistake, you get to see me do something different. All right, so I'm going to start pushing this grout back into here. The consistency we're looking for is kind of like a cake or brownie, let's say brownie mix. You want it to kind of stick to your knife, but when you kind of shake the knife that it falls off a little bit. Nice sound, huh? You can hear that sand in there. And that's still too watery, so I really blew it. I'm going to put a little bit more in. And again, do that a little bit at a time, or you're going to get in this vicious circle of powder, water, powder, water. And I leave my mask on until I am done mixing up the grout. Okay, this is a little bit more of what I'm looking for. You can see it's kind of sticks to the knife, but if the knife, my popsicle stick kind of sticks to it, but if I do that, it comes off. That's kind of what you're looking for. So now what you do, patience. You take your mask off. It's already mixed. Your powder's done. I'm going to leave my glove on. But what you need to do is wait 10 minutes because this undergoes a chemical reaction called slaking. And you want that chemical reaction to take place before you start applying your grout to your mosaic. So I'm just going to pause a second because you don't want to watch me for 10 minutes of slaking. And then I'll come back and we'll go from there. Okay, so we're back. You waited 10 minutes, right? You could have thrown in a load of laundry while you were waiting. So I haven't messed with this for 10 minutes, and you can see now how much it's starting to thicken up. And you just give it a quick stir. I didn't mess with it the whole time. I was waiting in that 10 minutes. And then you just give it a quick stir before you're ready to use it. And you know, when we mixed it before, I didn't mention it, but make sure, you know, that there's no powder left in the bottom. You know, you got to get all the way down there and mix. All right, so here's the mosaic. And this is where I want to remind you, you are trying to get the grout in the crevices between the glass. You are not icing a cake, okay? Grout on top of glass doesn't do you any good. People end up just smoothing it around like it's a cake, and that's not the way it rolls. So I'm going to put some grout onto my mosaic. I'm not putting it all on because I might have overdone it here, as you know. But watch. And like I said, you can just use a palette knife or just as easily, I can use a good old cheapy plastic knife, all right? And what I'm doing is I'm pushing it as much as I can into the cracks. Now, I do like my palette knife a little bit better because it's got offset bend, so it's easier for me to move around. So I'm going to go back to my palette knife. But you certainly can get by with a plastic knife. Now you notice I'm getting all the way into those cracks. And notice I'm going in several directions. You know, you don't want to just be going in one direction because then your stuff might not, your grout might not get into all the places it needs to be. All right. So let's go ahead and get all of this in here. And this is where I remind people, don't be afraid to move your mosaic around, okay? Now I'm going to go try it in this direction a little. The nice thing about this particular substrate that has the lip on it is that the grout doesn't fall off the edges. Makes it a lot neater for this video. But you know, when you're doing it at home and you don't have that nice edge on it, you probably should just put a newspaper under it because grout will fall off the sides, okay? All right, you can see I'm gonna have plenty of grout to get into all these crevices. Another thing I might mention too, and again, this is the advantage of the substrate with the rim on it, is the grout's not going anywhere. But you know, if it was and you didn't want to get your edges messy, you could take some blue painter's tape and tape it around here to make sure that you didn't get grout on it. All right, looks like I chose just the right amount. I guess I do this often enough. All right. So when you take grout, don't, like you start taking it off of your mosaic, don't put it back into this container because this has started to dry already. This still has the chemical reaction going on. So what you're going to do is actually put this like on a newspaper or in the trash or something. So I have a paper towel here. I'm just going to be wiping this off as I go. And now, like I said, I don't need any of this excess grout. So I'm going to be taking that off. And I can see it's still a little wet, so I might pause the video a bit while it's drying. But again, I am not putting it back into the original container, and I am not icing a cake. So I'm going to go ahead and pause a minute while I clean this up and just getting the excess grout off. So I spread the grout around, took off the excess, and now you can see how it's kind of got a cloudy look and you can see the glass through it. I'm also going to take a paper towel and start wiping some of this off. But you notice how it's still kind of smearing? That means that the grout isn't quite dry enough yet for me to finish this off. So I'm going to just take off, you know, a little bit of it. This is a patience thing, layer by layer, okay? And then I'm going to just pause the video again for a couple minutes. And then as this gets cloudier and cloudier, it shows me that the grout is drying and it'll be easier for me to take this off. But I want you to remember too that, you know, this is sea glass. And so it's not real shiny. So, you know, when you use regular glass, it'll be a lot shinier. Okay, so deep breath, take another couple minutes. Okay, so now we're in the home stretch, just basic cleanup. All right, so you can see if I just take a couple of these pieces of glass with a paper towel, that color's coming right off. This is what we want to see. This means the mosaic is ready to wipe off. And notice I'm doing big circular patterns, you guys. I'm not doing one of these little itsy bitsy things one piece at a time. The idea is you don't want to disturb the grout. You just want to keep cleaning this off. All right. Notice now how nicely that color is all coming through. And I'm going to go ahead and finish it up over here. Lost a little bit of my paper towel. I have a piece of glass here that has texture in it. You can't see that up really close, but so I have to rub that one a little bit harder. But look how nicely now that that's coming out. And remember I told you too that any glass that had an imperfection, the pieces would show it. So like you can see in this one, there's a little divot, so there's some grout in there. This one's got a little divot. I could take a small pointed tool and push some of that out, you know, something like a little stick, you know, like that. But, you know, it's not really necessary. You got to remember, you're the only one that knows that that's there like that. But if it makes it look a little cleaner and neater to you, feel free to do that. You can get picks and stuff at Harbor Freight or any craft store. And sometimes some of those marks are leftover glue. So one of the other things I wanted to mention too, when you're wearing a glove, when you're doing the grout, is of course keep the chemicals off your hand. But, I'm sorry, it wasn't about the glove, it's about the palette knife. When you're pushing this grout in, this was sea glass. It didn't have any sharp edges, but when you use a palette knife, you avoid getting cut. And that's the other reason to use it. And also the sanded grout tends to take off any residual glue, and it tends to sand down edges a little bit, making it safer. After a point, you could rub in your grout with your hand when you know that you can't get cut anymore. Now on this, I'm just going to go around with my finger and I'm going to clean up my edges a little bit. For those of you that have regular edges, don't stress about the edges at the beginning of your mosaic because your grout's still too soft. Later on, after it's gotten like to this point where it's a little bit drier, then go try to clean up your edges. And if you need to, add a little bit of grout in there, you can just take a little pinch out of this container and put it into those spaces. All right, so what do we have here? I'm gonna put this over my trash can a second to get rid of some of that sand. And I am just about done. Like I said, this wasn't real shiny glass, so you're not gonna see, a total shine effect, but you can see how all of that cloudiness is going away. So this is pretty much a completed mosaic. What I would recommend doing after all the grout is dry, and again, 24 hours is a good rule of thumb, is that you could go back and just clean up the tesserae with some Windex. And when you do that, what you want to do is get your paper towel and spray the Windex onto the paper towel, not directly onto the mosaic, because you might stain it with this blue color, or whatever color Windex you're using, or glass cleaner. So spray it on here, and then, when you do that, I'll show you real quick that even though my mosaic isn't dry, then it just tends to do the final cleanup and pieces get a little cleaner. All right? So that is the end of this particular mosaic video. This is the piece that we have. It's just nice and simple, but it's really fun. I'm going to call it my, rainbow giraffe or something like that. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, my name is Andrea, and I'm in Tucson, and my website is mosaics-by-andrea.art. Hope you had fun. Thanks.